So it's the summer of '84. We got cocaine abuse, serial killers running wild. Shit, count me in.
Even serial killers live next door to somebody.
So I didn't know until I was done watching the movie, but apparently this movie was directed by the same trilogy of directors who made Turbo Kid, and I love that movie. So if you've never seen that movie, go check it out. But what you have in this movie is you have this group of 4 friends who eventually go on to believe that their neighbor's a serial killer. And this movie ends up being a fun little 80s noir thriller where you have this group of kids trying to investigate their neighbor and see if he's actually the culprit. And how they end up doing this is the main character's a paper boy, so one day when he's on his route, he crosses his neighbor who ends up being suspicious. When he's in the middle of handing off the paper to his neighbor, he sees that there's missing kids in the neighborhood and there's a guy coined the Cape May Slayer. So one night when all of the 4 boys are out playing this game they call Manhunt, which is essentially hide and seek, the main character thinks that he sees one of the kids who will go on to be missing in the neighbor's front window. And because he sees this and because he's a teenager with nothing to do during the summer, he decides that he's going to spend his summer investigating this guy because he believes he could be the culprit and he could solve this crime. Now, first off, what I love is when a movie takes a premise that you feel like you've seen 100 times and makes it super fresh and original to the point where it feels like you've never seen it before. That's what this movie did for me. Before I get into the characters a little bit more, I love this movie's soundtrack. It's super retro 80s synth the entire way through in almost every scene, and I'm the biggest sucker for that shit. Pretty much every scene, no matter the dialogue, whether there's tension, you have this little synth in the background playing like... Always find for some reason, for me at least, that 80s music and synth makes me kind of nostalgic for an era I was never in. Getting back to the actors, I thought all the acting in this movie was very good, from the kids to the guy they suspect could possibly be a killer. And I thought it was a surprisingly fun time to hang out with them as they do their little teenage shenanigans where they're doing their investigation and they're acting like kids, you know, stealing dirty magazines, spying on the neighbors. And since you're going to spend a lot of time with these kids, I think that's a very important thing that they hit the nail on the head with. And that was really important to me because I feel like whenever you inject teenagers into a movie, it's very much a slippery slope because teenagers, everybody knows, are like so inherently annoying that if you have them on screen for long enough that you might actually get sick of them. But I never got sick of these kids. I thought they were good kids overall. I mean, they do some weird things, but they're teenagers. They're never over the top pervy or something to the point where I couldn't stand watching them. And when you're hanging out with these kids, it really is kind of like a Stand By Me vibe where you just feel like you're hanging out with 4 friends who are kind of having a coming of age tale trying to investigate this guy. And as for the neighbor they're trying to portray as the creepy guy who could potentially be creepy, I thought he was great in this movie. I thought he does a really good job of being a very friendly guy who's just for some reason slightly offsetting, so you really don't know what to make of him, even though you kind of have evidence on both sides that he could be a creep and maybe he's not. Because what you have is you have this character who kind of will do these really weird actions, like he's buying a lot of dirt and he's buying things that you know could dispose of a body. He's like overly friendly with the neighborhood kids, but again, it was the times, it was the 80s, so people I guess maybe acted more like that. And then it always seems like he conveniently finds ways to like ask kids to come into his house. Like he's constantly asking the main character to either come in his house and help him move something. There's a scene in this movie where he asks if he can go in the main character's house to make a phone call. So it seems like he's always on the brink of trying to inject himself into a creepy way where you're not really sure like if this guy's predatory or not. And I think it's really good. Because to me, again, that's very important. Whenever a mystery like this hedges on the disbelief of whether or not the guy is or is not bad, I think it's very important for you to be able to play both sides of it. And I love that shit. Whenever a movie can get you to juggle both sides, is he not? Because this movie does a very good job at introducing evidence to you that isn't quite conclusive enough that you can be 100% sure either way because it's always circumstantial. And if I had a comparison to how I would say this movie is made, I'd say it's a complete hybrid between Black Phone and Disturbia. You have a lot of scenes where you have the neighborhood kids up in a treehouse or in the main character's house spying on the guy with binoculars. You have them planting walkie-talkies, just things that are very traditional in that sense, which I actually think was super cool because every kid at that age, you know, when they're playing capture the flag or they're looking for an investigation, they're always trying to inquire about something. Summers got boring and kids always tried to stay busy, so I kind of related to it. And it's just so fitting that when they do think they have evidence or they do think that they've made a big break in the case, no parents will believe them, which is just so reminiscent of being a teenager when everyone just thought you were up to no good at all times. And something I did like about this movie, as well as Disturbia, as I mentioned earlier, I was a fan of that movie, is whenever a movie can create tension without the need to constantly just shove jump scares down your face. And I feel like this movie does that well too. It really does just enough to keep you engaged in terms of tension where there's a jump scare every once in a while and it usually has relevance to the story as opposed to just injecting it to keep you occupied. And that's very important to me because in this type of movie, it's really just a cat and mouse game where, you know, you're trying to investigate, not get caught. Maybe he thinks you're onto them or not. And the tension is very useful because in this movie, you do like the kids, like I said, so you don't want them to get caught. If they were too over the top with the characters or they were too pervy, they were unlikable, you just do what you do in every horror movie, which is just root for the killer to kill them all. But in this movie, I actually got worried the kids would maybe get caught when they're investigating. And something else I guess that's a bit unique about this movie is I got up a handful of times in this movie to go to the bathroom, get snacks, things like that. And anytime I was coming back to the screen, I noticed the runtime that was about 2 hours, but I never really thought that it was dragging on. I just thought that the movie was just pacing at a good pace. So with that, I don't think it overstays its welcome. I think it has like a good pacing, even though it's a bit of a slow burn in the first half to where you never feel like it's really overplayed and the investigation's getting boring like some of these movies do. When you do get to the third act in this movie and you're hanging out with the kids and they're trying to conclude their investigation, is he a creep? Is he not? I thought the intensity in this movie was great. The slow burn kind of keeps going and going until it boils over and you get a very satisfying conclusion to the end of the movie. And I really like when a movie can conclude a mystery like this and I feel completely satisfied at the end of it. I would never say I was on the fence with this movie. I enjoyed the entirety of this movie, but I actually thought this movie had the perfect ending for what they were trying to accomplish. It's very rare that a movie like this can get a conclusion of the mystery where you don't feel a little bit let down or maybe there's like a cliffhanger you don't like or something like that. But basically everything at the end of this movie worked for me personally. I thought it was pretty clever with the way they were able to harpen back to the beginning of the movie for some of the references for how they chose to end the movie, but it really worked either way. And if I had to make a comparison of a movie like I did earlier, maybe Black Phone, I actually like this movie more than Black Phone. I kind of don't know why this movie didn't get any recognition in 2018, but hopefully more people start seeing it because I think it's a really good horror movie. Overall, I would buy this movie 100%. I'll probably rewatch this movie soon, honestly. I had a really good time with this movie, and some of these movies usually lose me, but this one didn't. I was engaged start to finish. I think this movie's pretty much a hidden gem, though. Like I said, it came out in 2018. Have you seen this movie? Let me know if you have in the comment section down below. I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, let me know what you thought of Disturbia or Black Phone if you saw those. What's your favorite little teen noir movie where they're investigating or maybe solving a crime? But yeah, if you liked what you saw in this video, feel free to subscribe. There's going to be more videos. Maybe let me know what videos you want to see. Either way, as always, guys, take care and stay safe.